Nell and Wayne, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for sharing what is such like an incredibly powerful film with us. So proud to have it in the program and really, really excited to chat to you about it. So I just wanted to start by asking kind of how the project came about and also like your collaboration.
Now might be able to.
So basically the project came about when we, a few years ago, it was about 4 years ago now, I approached Stephen Page, the artistic director of Bangarra. I had seen some of their work and I had seen him speak at something, and I realised he was an incredible character, and I come from an arts documentary background. So I spoke to him about possibly doing a sort of behind the scenes documentary at Bangarra. I suppose what I didn't realise was what the wealth of archive and this big historical story that came with that. And so we were very lucky when we kind of stumbled on that. But quickly after getting that access with Stephen, we got Wayne on board. And from there, we kind of developed it together. And Wayne had a totally different perspective because he'd kind of been in the Bangarra world himself.
Yeah, no, I think I did a show back with Bangarra as an actor. They did a show for the Olympic Arts Festival called Skin, Spear, a part of a show called Skin, which had two halves. One was a female section, the second half was a male section. And Stephen Page asked me to perform in that. And we're at the Opera House for the Olympic Games, and it was fantastic. And it was the only show I ever did, but I've sort of done a few voiceover for them, or just worked with the company, or worked with Stephen and David and Russell. And so, you know, when Nell sort of, and Ivan, the producer, mentioned, oh, this is what's happening, you know, I sort of put my hand up and said, I'd love to be involved. You know, allowing, of course, if Bangarra and Stephen, you know, sort of accepted that this was a team with Nell and I, and they did, and that was the beginning.
And I mean, you clearly built between you over that time a great deal of trust. I mean, to kind of you know, to sort of, for the film to kind of culminate in that interview with Stephen Page as it does, where, yeah, you really get the sense that he really opened up to you, and not just the archives and his story, but, you know, himself as well. And that really comes across.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen's you know, now I could speak, you know, I've known Stephen for many years. You know, there's a protective quality that he does possess, like any artist or any of us really, that has, you know, when we go through life, we just sort of have that as a veil of sorts. And so, and to sort of put a mirror up to his life and his company, not his company, but a company that he's been a part of for 29 years was, I don't know, it was just, it was what we had to do, how far, you know, from my perspective, and, you know, how far it would go from what we received information that Stephen gave us was a day-by-day scenario, or month-by-month, or year-by-year. And, you know, for what he gave us, you know, how it started and to where it finished, in the sense of how much he, you know, he gave over and shared with us from his own personal life, his family's life, but also the company's life, was very, very much indeed, you know. So it began sort of here. That was zero, it began here, and it sort of built up over the months and the 2 or 3 years. So Nell, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wayne being a friend and family member, you know, obviously that's a huge amount of trust sort of implicitly, I think, from where I stood there. And I think also as a documentary maker, it's about that amount of time that you can have with someone. And I think we did spend 2 to 3 years from initial conversation to the end. And that interview was done in the very final stages of the filmmaking. And we've, you know, I think, yeah, definitely. It's very much that Wayne is part of a part of that family and friendship group, but I think also it's just having that time is a real blessing and the essence of how you can get to interviews like that with people, I think.
And I guess at what point did you kind of realize that you had so much more than a kind of behind the scenes documentary and you know, very much a kind of beautifully like cinematic, powerful kind of film in its own right?
I think we knew there was a story behind the company as it was today. We knew the history, so we always had the intention of talking about the history within the frame of the sort of behind the scenes documentary. I think it was when Stephen literally said, "Here's a bit of, you know, family archive," and David filmed all of that time in the early days of Bangarra, that we realised that actually we had enough footage, and particularly finding those interviews with Russell and David, we had enough footage to make an entire film out of the archive ultimately. And that again, that probably happened reasonably early in the process, but yeah, it certainly, finding that archive means suddenly you've got access to these characters on screen and people on screen that you would never, you'd just never be able to you can't talk about people in the same way that you can actually hear from them. So that was a huge treasure trove, really.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I remember watching the first cut because I was doing something else, and Nell and the first editor, Karen Johnson, and we had two editors, Nick Myers, and they were both fantastic in different ways. They just opened up a story, and we sort of had pinpoints. And then I saw the story, and it was, you know, as you see in assembly, you're sort of going, oh, I know that's there, but I can see the heart of it, and I can see the through line of the story. And I thought to myself after that, and I shared it with Nell, and we might have been going, a few of us might have been going at times going, oh, this could be better. Oh my God, I'm a happy days. What are we doing? But for me, at the end of it, I just went, oh, shivers. It's going the way that Nell and I sort of, it felt like you were going in the right path. And if you just trusted the path and knowing what we had to film, it felt like it was playing to our favor in the sense of just telling a good story that we could share with the world. But then, you know, say the Olympics, we've got a lot of footage from the Olympics from them. We've got a lot of footage from Bangarra, as Nell said, but little things just popped up, you know, that people would allow us to share archival footage from, say, Tackling Romeo, the film, you know, little bits and pieces, not just one bit piece, but little bits and pieces just sort of just paved the way for us a little bit. And then I think when Karen stopped, our first editor, and had to work on another project, when Nick took over, we got more of the archival footage of all of the dances that Bangarra had stored for the last 29 years, footage that we didn't have before. So that opened the film up in a different way, just gave us some more weight, and, you know, just gave it another level of something else, getting Nick to sort of bleed into these choreographic routines that were 29 years old, and really good versions and good quality of the last 10 years, I suppose. So we had it all there, just the ingredients. It just, it took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And Bangarra, as you know, as a dance company, and the three brothers obviously have, like, you know, these kind of incredible stories to tell that come, you know, that are kind of important. And well, there's a quote from David that I just wondered if kind of resonated with yourselves as filmmakers. So he said, using our art form as our weapon is the way we need to fight. And yeah, I wondered about whether or not that kind of the message of how you felt that kind of responsibility, maybe of the message that Bangarra is trying to communicate through dance, through your film, and I guess what you hope for people to take away from it.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm an Indigenous artist in this country called Australia. And for me to tell a story like this, I feel very privileged and blessed because, firstly, it's a beautiful story. You know, there's a few second lead, third leads, but another point is that, you know, for me, seeing people of colour on our screens, mixing it with people in this country and mixing it with people all over the world, it just has a positive stereotype that this country, that doesn't happen. It happens more as we grow into the 2021. But for me, it just seeing those positive stereotypes and those positive role models is inspiration for our young people, is paramount in the ethos of what I'd like to do, whether it be acting or directing or writing or just a day-by-day experience. So, and you know, what David says is that quote in the film, I believe in it entirely. Using our art as our weapon, you know, you can only chip, you can't quit. And as COVID, like another element is COVID in this country, artists are in the bottom lower of the echelon. Imagine being an Indigenous artist, you're probably even a little bit lower. But what this doco does for me is a part of what David's quote is. But you know, and that's where I come from as an artist in this country, and I suppose the world. But most definitely, most definitely, day by day, you sort of go. There's a bigger picture than anything else. It's it's huge, but it's so simple. It's because the answer is so easy. It's about story, family, community, and then sharing that story to inspire, to educate, to inform, to give love to. So yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. There's there's another quote in there as well about storytelling is the best medicine. You know, that way of I guess as you were saying about kind of representation and telling those stories on.
Yeah.
I think also the thing is, as the receiver of those stories as a non-Indigenous Australian, and then further to the world, I like to think that it's something that means that that there's an understanding, and you said, Wayne, an education, but it's very much an understanding of a story that we just haven't heard enough of. And I think there's this has been quite a journey for me as a filmmaker, and I think that we do get a lot of stories of Indigenous Australia, especially historically, told from a white perspective. And what does that look like, and what does that mean? There's been a lot of politics in the last while around, non-Indigenous Australians mining Indigenous stories and then kind of benefiting from that. And all of these kinds of conversations are the ones that are coming into the edits room with me and Wayne, where you're kind of going, how do we tell this story? What's the respectful way? How much are you kind of leaning into something because it's drama, and is that okay? And what does that mean to the community? And, so I think like even just having those conversations behind the scenes helps, but certainly, being on screen, those conversations kind of translating to the on-screen outcome, I think is the only way we can really understand it, unless you're going to go and study it. But if you're just going to want to watch a film, and just to clarify, Wayne's, an absolute, the forerunner of filmmakers telling Indigenous stories, and for years and years. For a long time, he's been making big changes for the whole of Australian audiences. So, I think we're just lucky to be able to, for me, I was lucky to be able to work with you, Wayne, but also just learn this story with a slightly different understanding of it, I think, and then continually question where you're sitting as a filmmaker who's not Indigenous, but then potentially as an audience as well, I think. So, interesting.
Yeah.
No, well, I certainly really appreciated the chance to kind of learn about a culture that I knew so little of, and it's also great to to kind of hear it from like three different, even though kind of interlacing like perspectives as well. treated through brothers, and yeah, I just found it like incredibly moving, incredibly powerful, and felt that the message came through strongly, but like both through the dance scenes themselves, in that kind of really visceral kind of way, and then was through the film as a whole. And yeah, I just wanted to end with about anything that you can kind of tell us about like Bangarra now. And I guess, you know, I know that Stephen Page would have liked to have joined us, but he's about to open a new show called Sandsong, I believe. And I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how much that might have been impacted by COVID and everything else. But I guess, you know, how in terms of kind of representation of, you know, Indigenous and First Nations like culture within the kind of mainstream, you know, I mean, how does it feel compared to 4 years ago, even when you started this project? How kind of accepted?
Yeah, it changes with the season. I think there's still such a long way to go. Yeah, as I said, it goes and swings and roundabouts, I think. But yeah, you know, what's great about it from a perspective, there's so many young Indigenous performers coming through, you know, so many, and you feel such like an old man these days, and you see these young voices coming through, because I think it is about voice. It's about giving people a voice that never had a voice, and then, you know, seeing how that voice just evolves and changes, because these young voices that are coming through, I never know their perspective or their view, their angle on a certain subject, whether it be a black, white subject, human subject, it could be anything. I just sort of going, oh my gosh, and they just open up your eyes. So I think that's a really positive thing, because, you know, as, you know, Uncle Kevin Gilbert said, it was the sharpest axe is ground on the hardest stone, you know. And so got all these fellas coming through are just, you know, a little bit tougher, a little bit smarter, and they can duck and they can weave, and then they can just be really direct in a way that perhaps I can't be. So it even inspires me big time.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both so much for taking the time and for sharing Firestarter with us. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing it.
Saying
really
now, thanks, Molly. Thanks, Owen. Thank you so much, and enjoy the film and, you know, the festival and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you both. Bye.